Hi guys, in today's video we are diving deep into one of the most essential design patterns in software development, the factory design pattern. Whether you are building complex applications or just looking to level up your coding skills, understanding the factory pattern is a must. So stick around because by the end of this video, you'll not only know what the factory pattern is, but also how to implement it in real world JavaScript projects. First things first, what exactly is the factory design pattern? In software development, design patterns are typical solutions to common problems in software design. The factory pattern in particular falls under the category of creational patterns. It's all about creating objects, but with a twist. Rather than creating objects directly, we create them through a special method known as a factory. By textbook definition, a creational design pattern that provides an interface for creating objects in a way that allows the instantiation logic to be separated from the code that uses the objects. This is known as a factory. In simpler terms, the factory pattern provides an interface for creating objects in a superclass, but allows subclasses to alter the type of objects that will be created. This means that you can create objects without needing to know their specific class types, which can be incredibly useful in certain scenarios. Before we dive deep into implementation, let's take a moment to understand why we even need the factory pattern. Imagine you're developing a game where players can choose different types of characters, warriors, mages, and archers. Without the factory pattern, your code might look something like this, where you have three constants, that is warrior, mage, and archer. And then if we try to console log dot attack to see what their content is. Here we are directly instantiating each character type. It might seem fine at first, but what if we need to add more character types? What if the character creation process becomes more complex? You'll end up scattering your instantiation logic all over the code base, making it harder to maintain and extend. This is where the factory pattern comes into play. It centralizes the object creation process, making your code more modular, easier to maintain, and more adaptable to change. Now let's refactor our code to use the factory pattern. We'll start by defining our character classes, warrior, mage, and archer, and then we'll create a factory to handle their creation. So these are the three classes. Each have a function called attack, which will just return the name and suggest some text. And finally, we have a character factory that will create an object depending on what its type is. Our character factory class has a static method create character that takes a type and a name as a parameter, and based on the type provided, it returns an instance of that corresponding character class. Let's see how this works in practice. Instead of directly creating instance of warrior, mage, or archer, we now use our factory to, to create objects. Notice how our object creation is now nearly encapsulated within the factory. If we need to add more character types or change the instantiation logic, we only need to modify the factory and not the rest of our code base. The beauty of the factory pattern lies in its extensibility. Let's say we want to add a new character type, say a healer. We can easily extend our factory to handle this. We just create a class called healer with a function attack, and we add it in our switch case. And that's it. We have a new healer. By simply adding a new class and updating the factory method, we seamlessly integrate a new character type into our game. This makes the factory pattern incredibly powerful for applications that require scalable and flexible object creation. Now that we have covered the basics, let's explore a real-world example where the factory pattern is invaluable. Imagine you're working on a messaging app that sends different types of notifications, that is, email, SMS, and push notifications. Each notification type might have its own logic and structure. So it might look something like this, that we have three classes, email notification, SMS notification, and push notification. And each have a send message that will just print the recipient and message. Finally, we can have a notification factory class which has a switch case and will return us an instantiated object depending on what type we have provided. In this example, the notification factory creates the appropriate notification object based on the type we specify. This design allows you to easily add new notification types in the future without modifying the code that uses the notifications. While the factory pattern is a powerful tool, it is important to understand when and how to use it effectively. Let's discuss some of the key advantages, potential drawbacks, and best practices. So its advantages are that it is centralizes object creation logic, simplifies object management, and enhances code modularity and reusability. And it makes it easier to add new type of objects. Some of the disadvantages are that it can introduce unnecessary complexity if it is overused, and it may obscure the code flow if it is not well documented. Let's look at some of the best practices that we should always use the factory pattern when object creation involves complex logic or when you have multiple subclasses that share a common interface. Avoid using factories for simple objects that don't require complex instantiation logic, and keep the factory method simple and focused. If it gets too complex, consider refactoring it. The factory pattern excels in scenarios where you have multiple related classes and want to manage their instantiation in a centralized and flexible manner. However, be cautious, overusing factories can lead to unnecessary complexity. So always evaluate if the pattern truly adds value to your specific use case. And that's a wrap over the factory design pattern in JavaScript. I hope this deep dive has given you a clear understanding of how to implement this pattern and benefits it brings to your code. Remember, the key to mastering design patterns is practice. So try incorporating the factory pattern into your projects where it makes sense. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and share and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.